This is the Night Shift Podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF night sports. The Night Shift starts now.
All right, welcome to this edition of Night Shift. Eric Lopez alongside Don Struble. If you're with us on this show, you are definitely very loyal. I don't know what that background noise is, Don, but it's
sorry, 1 second. A little construction going on. Let me just mute real quick.
Well, construction, yeah, that's a good word to describe today. As UCF losing to Cincinnati 19-13, the final score. As the Knights lose their third straight game, drop to 3-3. Coming up, we'll be joined by Kyle Nash and Bryson Turner, who is at the Bounce House. They're going to be catching, obviously, the postgame coverage. That's going to be very interesting postgame. Here's some of the comments that are said from head coach Gus Malzahn and the players. And certainly we welcome you. Throw in your comments and questions. Right now, we will read them as best as we can. Try to keep them clean, everybody. But Don, that was a rough watch. That was a rough football game. That is a game that will not be remembered for artistic. It was a rough, brutal game. I'm not sure either fan base, quite frankly, feels great about that game. Maybe Cincinnati fans just because they're glad they somehow won the game. But I don't think either team was really showed that they're anything great. But unfortunately for UCF, they have lost their third straight in a row. Offensive struggles, lots of questions with the quarterback changes. We will address that and much more coming up on this edition of Night Shift. Of course, you can follow us. Where can Don tell the audience where they can follow us?
All right. So, audience, we are on all major social medias. You can find us Twitter at UCF Banneret _SBN. You can find us on Instagram at Black and Gold Banneret, same for Threads. And you can also find us on Facebook as well.
All right, we're getting an echo right there, Don. So see if we can get that. I'm getting an echo from you. But Knights fall 19-13. The big story happened prior to the game, where the Knights decided to bench KJ Jefferson. They started EJ Colson. And of course, ended up playing Ja'Cory Brown in the game. I'm curious to hear what people have to say about that decision. But Don, let me start with you. What was your reaction when you heard the news that EJ Colson would start? This game was announced shortly before, about 20, 30 minutes before kickoff. Your reaction to the move?
Well, Elo, certainly it was a tough, unpredictable week for the state of Florida, and it was a tough and unpredictable week for the UCF Knights, it seems. This was kind of unexpected to me. I really thought that KJ Jefferson was going to get trotted out there again. I didn't expect such a significant change at the most important position in the sport to come so soon before game time. But I thought that EJ handled it with stride. I mean, we're talking about a kid who, unless I'm mistaken, is not even 18 years old yet. He's a true freshman, and he came out there, and while he didn't get a lot of opportunities, he showed composure and poise, in my opinion, until Ja'Cory Brown took over the game. And I think he's going to have a bright future. Hopefully it's with the Knights. We'll see. But I thought that it took a lot to put that trust in him, given his lack of experience, and he handled it as well as he could.
I was surprised. I had started hearing some rumblings on Friday night that this could be a possibility. I certainly was not expecting both him and Ja'Cory Brown to play. That's what ended up happening. In fact, Ja'Cory Brown ended up getting the most snaps in the game, benching KJ Jefferson. I didn't understand the decision. I would have waited another game. Mm-hmm. I felt this was a panic move to some extent. I understand on the broadcast they mentioned that Gus told the crew there that this was a move of trying to get a spark going, and I certainly understand that. And certainly KJ has not played well. But, Don, I think this game proved that the problems with this team and this offense is beyond just the quarterback position. there's a ton of problems with this team and this offense in particular that I think goes beyond the quarterback. And, I find it, I'm just so fascinated. They start E.J. Colson, but they bring Ja'Cory Brown, who's the more of the veteran, in relief. Now, on the broadcast, they mentioned that Colson had earned his way into the backup job, but yet it seems like Brown maybe it's a 1A, 1B situation. I just find that interesting. And now what do you do moving forward? You used up all these trump cards. Like, I don't know if you can go back to Jefferson. Who do you go with? Do you go with Ja'Cory Brown? I guess. This was a bizarre move. I'm still trying to digest these moves overall. And while there were some decent plays from Brown, and at times, you also saw the flaws, in particular there at the end where he took a sack. Some sacks at times where he shouldn't have. I think he tends to get out of the pocket quickly and kind of bails. The bottom line is, I thought it was a game too early. I would have tried to play Jefferson, who's been there, done that, but they didn't. And here we are. Didn't work. And that's the problem now. It didn't work.
Yeah, you're right. It didn't work. And now you go and you face the heavy hitters of the Big 12 in Iowa State on the road next week, which is going to be an incredibly challenging game. And then you come back home for BYU the week after that. But yeah, I feel like we're in a situation where we're facing a 5-alarm fire with this team. It did feel like a move out of desperation. I agree with you, Elo. I would have given KJ at least one more run at it, given the experience, see if he has a chance to get himself back together. Now, I don't know where his confidence level is after being benched for this game and seeing that the result wasn't any better. I mean, second straight week in a row, offense can only muster 13 points. And while I think that Ja'Cory Brown showed promise and showed that he is a very good backup or could eventually become a starter, like you said, the issues with this team go beyond the quarterback position. I mean, we saw the 2 fumbles by Johnny Richardson. Who knows what those offensive series could have turned into if that didn't happen.
I don't think we saw much of him, if at all, after those 2 fumbles.
No. He was pretty much pulled at that point, it seemed. And they were facing a Cincinnati team that was strong through the air. I mean, Brendan Sorsby came into this game 12 touchdowns to only 1 interception, and they were able to force 2 picks on him in the first half. So it was looking promising. But once again, an anemic offense that faltered due to turnovers. I mean, getting pinned deep in their own territory and then getting forced into 3 and out, that didn't help anything. I mean, that ultimately led to Cincinnati's touchdown drive in the following series. And so what do you do when you're getting into the thick of this schedule? Because, Quadric last week, he said that he believes that this is still a team that can win the Big 12 championship. It's not looking that way. No, I mean, it's looking like, if anything, this team will be lucky to finish above 500 with the way the schedule looks moving forward and the way they're playing. I mean, they have 3 ranked opponents coming up to finish the year.
This, you could argue on paper, was their best shot as far as winning a football game. They're probably going to be underdogs the rest of the way. Now, look, do I think they're going to lose out? I don't know about all that, but the bottom line is they're going to win. By the way, lots of chats and comments on our YouTube channel. So all you subscribers, thank you for that. We will read some of those. We should be also getting some comments on our chat here in the StreamYard as well. Some of our Facebook, we're live on Facebook as well there. So you could give us some comments there. So I'm actually going to juggle some multiple tabs here because we're getting comments from everywhere, Don. We're getting it from everywhere. Kind of like Cincinnati blitzing on that last play where they go there. Offensive line, not very good. I mean, Cincinnati was able to get pass rush with a three-man front. That was discouraging. And the book is out, Don. Teams know, stop UCF's running game, make them beat you with the pass. The UCF running game has been contained, and they have not been able to answer that question, Don.
Yeah,
and
no, I agree.
It's easy to argue it went dark.
Yeah, I know. I'm having all the technical difficulties today.
I had that problem last week, buddy.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, you're right. It's one of those things where the book is out, and I just never thought the predictability of this offense could get this bad. I mean, they are so reliant on Kobe Hudson throughout the air, so much so. Let's talk about it. 13 targets for him today and he was good. 7 receptions, a $114, and a tud, but 13 targets. The next closest guy on that list was Javarius Johnson with 3. You cannot continue to just go to one guy. They have to find a way to get these other receivers. They have to scheme them open and get them involved, because if it's going to be the RJ Harvey and Kobe Hudson show with the quarterback carousel that's going on in Gus's program, this is a team that, yes, they might not lose out, but I can see the rest of the season being well below 500.
Well, and then the question becomes, what do you do at the quarterback position? There'll be a lot of questions about that. What do you do moving forward? That remains to be seen. What would you do, Don, right now? Having seen all the 3 guys, what would you do now? Who starts in Ames, Iowa next week against Iowa State?
Well, if you're going to make a decision like you did today, you can't reverse course. I think that Ja'Cory Brown has to be the starter next week. And if things go haywire and start to go downhill quickly, maybe you bring KJ back into the fold. But Gus has never, at least not this season, benched a quarterback mid-game. He's always gone with KJ, even when KJ was struggling. And today's decision, while there were rumblings of it, was seemingly last minute. And I think that the best decision is to stick with Ja'Cory Brown, because, he had a nice game. He put together some nice numbers, 13 of 20 for 207 and that touchdown to Kobe. I think his mobility is better than KJ's. I think he has a quicker step, and he was finding some success on those crossing routes. You have to try to find a way to implement a game plan around that gets more people involved. But yeah, I'm sticking with Ja'Cory. You can't mess with this too much. You have to find some stability within this team.
He seemed, at least it looked like the pace was quicker than it was with KJ. That's the one thing. I think Ja'Cory seems to be a quicker runner, faster runner at this point than KJ was. So I think that's part of the part. I agree. I think Ja'Cory will start. I'm curious what you do with EJ Colston, though. They started him. Do you continue to play him? He's probably your future. Do you play him? Do you play both? Do you just stick with Ja'Cory Brown? I think those are some things they're going to have to figure out, because I'll be honest with you, Don. I know this sounds really negative, but I am to the point where I'm playing for next year. I'm not. This year's over. You're not going to go anywhere this year. I'm not one that gets excited about bowl games at 7-5 or 6-6. So to me, one of the biggest goals, the things that UCF has to do this remainder of this year, they need to know who their starting quarterback is in 2025. And if that's EJ Colston, then you play him, in my view. Maybe you believe Ja'Cory Brown is the future. I'm not as sold on him. I saw him in Miami. I think you saw a lot of things. He did some nice things. He did some things he struggled. I think you saw some things that he did at Miami, quite frankly. Maybe you believe with some extra reps, maybe he could be the guy moving forward. But to me, that's the biggest decision now the rest of the year, in my opinion, Don.
No, that's a good point, Elo. It's going to be a struggle the rest of the way. And how can you get excited for a 7-5 bowl game with the expanded playoff format and a team that had high hopes after, Coach Malzahn's aggressiveness in the portal and really building this team up? And you have to have some sort of plan for EJ moving forward, because I thought today, when they brought Ja'Cory Brown in, I thought it was going to be a situation similar to the Florida Gators, where they were going to run the 2 QB set like they do with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway over there in Gainesville. And they just never went back to EJ. And so it just, you can feel the desperation in the coaching staff's moves and the plans that they're trying to implement, because there's no stability right now. And I agree with you. At least in this moment, and I'm not trying to be overzealous or anything, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but it does feel like, given the strength of schedule the rest of the way, this season might be a wash and you need to start focusing on 25.
Let's get some comments here. It's in our chat room and our YouTube channel. Of course, subscribe there. Lots of great content on our YouTube channel. Flies. How's everyone doing? Tough loss. Should we have passed more? Should we have passed more? Defense seemed to hold up. What's your thoughts on that, Don? Should we have I don't know if they should have passed more. I would say there was some underneath stuff they could have gotten, but I don't know. Clearly this is a team that's always going to try to get the running game more. And remember, the TCU game, they didn't bail on the running game, and it worked out for them. I don't think they were far enough behind that you just bail on the running game. And I would have used Brand. If anything, I think the play calling wasn't the issue from that standpoint. I just don't think they're good enough, period. They don't – you mentioned they need somebody other than Kobe Hudson to make plays. I'm not sure they have that right now. I think they were hoping Johnny Richardson would be that guy today. And clearly, because they got him involved early, but he fumbled twice. And then they have these other unproven receivers. So I don't know if passing would have been the answer, but I understand certainly the thought process there. Your thoughts, Don?
Yeah, well, firstly, Fries, welcome back. Thank you for being a consistent commenter and viewer of our show. We appreciate that. It's one of those things where I agree with you, Elo. Who else is going to be that person to step up if you're going to try to get the passing game ramped up? This is really where I feel the loss of Xavier Townsend is starting to rear its ugly head, because he was putting together a decent stretch of games on the receiving front, outside of his special teams responsibilities. But now he's gone, and it just feels so one-dimensional. So can you pass more? Yeah, but you need to scheme these other receivers open somehow and play to their strengths. I just refuse to believe that a team full of such veteran players and talent cannot involve more than one receiver. I would like to see more Trent Whittemore, to be honest with you. I mean, that was an incredibly athletic play he made against Colorado, and I know that everyone can pop off for one good play. I mean, Magwood today had his first reception of the season.
Yeah, and the fourth down play, yeah.
Yeah, and that was great. If that was a designed rollout, maybe that's the move, the kind of plays you want to start calling if you keep Brown at QB, because like I said just a little while ago, his mobility is nice and he seems to have a quicker step than KJ, though I do feel that both of them hold on to the ball too long and the offensive line is struggling, so it makes passing harder.
Roger Greenberg, we went from 3-0 to 3-3 this season. This is unacceptable. We won 3 and then lost 3. We have to turn it around against Iowa State. Well, good luck. I mean, Iowa State's playing good football with Matt Campbell right now. They might be right now to play as we speak. They're among the favorites right now in the Big 12 picture. BYU beat Arizona last I checked, so they're going to remain undefeated. They come here in 2 weeks, Don.
They do.
So the next 2 weeks, UCF will be playing ranked teams.
That's right.
And then you've got an Arizona team that's been underwhelming with their new coaching changes there they had over the offseason, but they got talent there as well. Then you go to Arizona State, who just knocked off Utah last night. Dillingham's done a nice job turning that around, that program. And then you still got to go to West Virginia. You still host Utah. I mean, this was the thing that's disappointing. And you could say we kind of saw the first half of the schedule was the one that was the easiest part. And they come out of it 3-3.
It was. And yeah, I mean, the TCU loss feels like, or TCU win, I apologize. It feels like last season. And with every week that TCU loses or has lost, it feels less impressive, especially when the losses are piling up for UCF. And it's just, I don't know what happened, but I mean, yeah, you just can't feel that great with a win over an FCS school in which KJ struggled, an FBS school in Sam Houston, but certainly not Power 5. And then you beat one Big 12 opponent, and now you're below 500 in the division with 2 big dogs coming up. I mean, half of their remaining games are against top 20 opponents, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you do with that?
Other comments here. Steven Gonzalez, please do not defend the play caller. I'm not defending anything. I just, at some point we got to accept the fact. I don't think you have the horses.
Yeah, no, I think and that's a shame because on paper it seemed like you did. But there's just.
Did we though? Did we? Because I had questions about the depth of the wide receiving corps going into the season, and that was prior to Xavier Townsend bolting, right? That's
a fair point.
Offensive line, not as deep as last year, not as good as last year. I think that we'll get to see Kyle's thoughts. They're not as good. A lot of people were hoping the defense was better. Look, I think the defense played okay. They were fine today. They held them to 19 points. They kept them in the game. They created a couple turnovers. I thought they played pretty well, and probably was the better side. Really, they were the better side of the two groups. I mean, who would have thought that the defense would be better than the offense at this point? But that's what happened. So I think that's a positive. I think the linebackers were playing well for UCF, but the lack of not a lot of pass rush still. And I still think Cincinnati. I don't know. Do you have the stats there? What was Cincinnati? It seemed like converted a ton of third downs.
So Cincinnati was awesome on third down, 9 of 16.
Yeah.
UCF was a little better. The last 2 weeks prior to this game, they were only 30% on third down. Today, they were 5 of 13, so a little bit better on third down. And they were 2 of 3 on fourth down. So they show that they can clutch up in those, third or fourth down positions for the most part. But it's third down where they've struggled. And yeah, I mean, yeah, they were getting better penetration on the quarterback, I think, than in past weeks. But it doesn't matter much when your DBs aren't always there to back you up and the secondary falls apart.
People are fired up, Don. As you would imagine, the comments are flowing. We appreciate that. There's a ton of comments here. I don't know why I'm not getting it in my room. Usually I can get it in the chat and I can show it on the video side. But, hey, we'll adjust. Eric Edwards, I don't care what these people say. I give Gus credit for making a change. This was on Johnny. I don't know. I mean, Johnny fumbling the football. What do you think? I don't know if you give him credit for making the change. What did it prove? Like, if you want to say you saw some better things from Brown than Jefferson, maybe. Did you see? I think Colson has a bright future. But at the end of the day, you brought it up, Don. They scored the same amount of points they did last week against Florida with KJ.
They did. Yeah, and that's the thing is it's just like, yeah, Gus made a change, but was it out of strategy or desperation? And it feels more like the latter than the former. And that's where I just have trouble giving credit. Like, yes, you want to avoid complacency, but what did you just do for your 1-year rental quarterback who I'm guessing has quite the NIL contract? So, now you're in this QB carousel where it's like you're trying to bring up the young kid, the true freshman, EJ Colson. You've got Ja'Cory Brown, a veteran who just proved himself to be decent, played better than KJ has, but then you still got KJ. And so, yeah, I mean, he made a change. I wouldn't exactly credit it for him, in my personal opinion, though.
Jeff Wiseman chimes in. Let Brown play the rest of the season and get him experience for next season. What do you think of that, Don? Do you think that Ja'Cory Brown can be your guy starting next year? And look, I'll say this. I don't disagree with that concept. I think you have got to play Brown and Colson the rest of the way. Now, I think a big question is how many games do you play Colson? And I think we're going to need some clarity on this. And I don't know if we'll get it in the post-game presser, Don, and we'll ask Kyle and Bryson about it, or if we're going to get it in the Monday availability, or eventually. Who was the number 2 quarterback? Who was ahead of who here? Was it Colson or Brown? Brown probably on experience has the edge, but maybe Colson has more upside. But I agree. I don't think you just used up your card on Jefferson. At this point, I don't see you going back to him unless you have to. I think you do play Brown. Maybe Brown's your future. Is it or Colson? I think you play those two. You got to decide. Do you want, because you could technically still play Colson 3 more times and keep the red shirt. Although I think the red shirt is becoming more and more overrated every year, because really, who's expecting EJ Colson to play here 4 years?
Yeah, and that is, I've seen some of Knight Nation on the old Twitter talking about, they don't want him to transfer. They don't want to lose him to the portal. And that isn't saying EJ Colson. And it's hard because, the red shirt factor is weird and you don't know what players are going to do. And the truth of the matter is Colson is a 4-star dual threat QB. That's someone that you would like to keep in your system and start giving reps to. But Brown has proven himself and he has the edge with the experience. I mean, his time in Miami and now coming here. And it's just it's a tough situation to be in. It's hard to say what the answer is for this team.
Eric, I don't know who you agree. I don't know why you're agreeing with Jeff. Jeff's not in here. Well, maybe was there a Jeff in the chat room here? Maybe I'm not sure. There's a lot of people chatting. You got Jeff Wiseman. Okay, so you got a lot of people are chatting within the chat room. This is incredible audience. This is the loyal right here. This is you want to know, Don, the loyalty of UCF fan. This is it. Our group right here. This is the loyal fans to our show. This is the loyalty to UCF. We're all committed. You know, we are dealing with this, all of it, folks. We're venting, and that's why we're on live here, ladies and gentlemen. Default 23, 2 Johnny fumbles killed EJ. Yeah, it didn't help EJ. You're right. Johnny Richardson, you feel like you knew that Johnny Richardson, with the departures, was going to have a bigger role, and it seemed like he was headed that way, but unfortunately he couldn't hold on to the football, Don.
Yeah. No, yeah, and that was a big momentum hit. I mean, I think with it happening so early in the first half, it's not an excuse to use to blame this loss on, but you got to protect the football. And it just, I mean, 3 total fumbles. Luckily, they jumped on the third one. But again, what could you have done with those drives otherwise if the ball is taken care of? You know, could you have at least put 3 on the board? And then that way, in that final drive, you give yourself a chance to tie it up with a field goal and send it to overtime instead of being down 6 points. I mean, the hypotheticals and the possibilities are endless, but the only tangible results that we have in front of our face are the 2 turnovers by Johnny Richardson, someone this offense is hoping or was hoping to rely on.
Remember when we were so deep in the backfield, by the way? They did get Montgomery back today, but didn't make a difference there, to say the least.
Yeah, 3 attempts for 10 yards.
We need another comments coming in. We need to be aggressive in the portal for some O-line and wide receiver. Here's the problem. We were. We kind of were. Look at the roster.
Yep. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I don't think aggression in the portal and meeting the needs in the portal was the issue here. I think that there is just a I don't know if I want to call it a coaching philosophy issue, but
Don, right? Like Don, Kyle and I discussed this on the regular podcast this past week about the portal and how dependent on you on the portal. Do you live by the portal? You die by the portal? And at some point, I think you can. There is such a thing as going overboard on the portal. You know, it's kind of like free agency in pro sports. You might hit some, but you're also going to miss some. You know, I wonder if you miss on some of these guys. That has a rippling effect. And I think there's got to be that balancing act. I'm not saying you go Dabo Sweeney and ignore the portal, although Clemson's having a very good year, bounce back year. They might be the favorites, them and Miami, for the ACC championship. Both might be, I think, in the playoff when it's all said and done. But I wonder, because we keep hearing about UCF and having this great recruiting class. I think we got to start seeing some of that develop on the field. Then you mix in a little bit of the transfers. I think perhaps when you depend so heavy on the portal, not just the UCF, but other places, do you have the chemistry? Do you have the rub? Do you have the vibe? You know, who's the leadership? That's tough to develop with a bunch of guys that are joining together and trying to play all at once.
Yeah, it makes it difficult. And I would have to look at the total number of transfers brought in, but it felt like every other day during the offseason, I was seeing a boom tweet by Gus about another guy that they had brought in. But yeah, you know, there is a level of, you know, cohesion and chemistry that needs to be developed. And the team had an identity. The identity is being stalled in the run game. And now their identity is in disarray. And it just feels like they don't have a backup plan. So now we're in the QB carousel. And it just feels like what do you do in this situation beyond that? Because the offseason's over. Time in the portal's over. I mean, we're here, we're in the thick of it, and it's a 3-loss losing streak. So, I mean, that's where we're at. And yeah, like you said, you can live and die by the portal. And Gus said last week, oh, this is the college football landscape now, when asked about the loss of his players who decided to redshirt and transfer out. And that's another thing too. You know, you're going to gain some and you're going to lose some. So it can hardly be the focal point. Not this one.
No, I think you got to develop a quarterback. To me, the rest of this year, it's about What do you have in Ja'Cory Brown? What do you have in E.J. Colson? Is one of those guys your guy in 2025? That's it. You got to find that guy. I don't believe when you're in a position that you're in UCF, you can go out there and get yourself a quarterback in the market because the quarterback's an expensive position right now in the sport. And you see the negative if you whiff on that. So develop your guy and who's there, and you build some camaraderie there. But we'll see. I mean, again, there's a lot of questions right now. G. Dot chime in. I haven't heard from G. Dot in a while. It would be one thing if UCF's possible 7-5 felt like some of the old Oklahoma State teams could sling the ball and had a chance to steal a win. This just seems like a 7-5 with no hope to steal a big win. I mean, 7-5. It's optimistic at this point. I don't know. What do you make of that, Don? Where are you with this team right now?
I don't know if I see 7-5. I mean, so they've played. This is week 7, so they've played 6 games. You got 6 to go. Half of those opponents are heavy hitter, top 20 opponents in your conference. They play Utah on the road, right, Elo?
No, they host Utah.
They host Utah. Oh, okay, so only one of those 3 top 20 opponents you have to go on the road for, and that'll be in Ames next week against Iowa State. 7-5 feels optimistic right now, unless they have some sort of awakening and they can get their confidence back, because the confidence has to be rattled. I mean, I'm not in that locker room right now, but I'm sure it's not great, despite how the players and Gus might be leading on. But 7-5 sort of feels like a reach at the moment, and I don't think that's necessarily a hot take on my end.
It's a long ways away.
It is.
That's the bottom line. We need to find. It's a long, long away right now. More comments coming in. Mike Neves, I need to take my meds before I can comment. There, I didn't do that. I did not do that a couple weeks ago for the TCU game. So that's actually very good advice. I did not. I wish you would have mentioned that when I was under medication. I was dealing with I was under the weather, and boy, I was fired up after that TCU. Little did I know that would be our last one. And think about this, Don. I mean, you're a false start away from losing 4 in a row. It wasn't, I mean, this team, you could argue, has only played a couple of good quarters since in Big 12 play so far. That's the thing that's just discouraging. It's not like, oh, well, you're playing well and you're just having bad luck. You've been outplayed. Outplayed. Maybe not as soundly today, but that's because I don't think Cincinnati's any great shake. So I wouldn't brag about that. And that's the disappointing thing. They are who they are at this point. And I don't know how this changes. I mean, you change the quarterback, you use that card. Maybe Ja'Cory Brown gets better. Maybe E.J. Colson gets better. But you're not going to get – and maybe other receivers step up. But I don't know. It's not looking great at this point. This was a must-win, right? We all felt – and clearly Gus felt this was a must-win. Otherwise, I don't think he pulls out all the cards that he did today.
Yeah. We see, and Gus, he's someone who relinquished the play calling, and then he brought those duties back for himself. And I'm just wondering if his play calling abilities and his head coaching abilities, if he can keep both up at a quality level to translate to wins, because we've seen this issue at bigger programs, such as in Ohio State, where Ryan Day was handling the play calling. They lose to Michigan 3 years in a row. He relinquishes it to Chip Kelly. Now, obviously, you're not going to get a heavy-hitting offensive coordinator like that in UCF's building, but I wonder if Gus has to take a look in the mirror and understand that maybe he has incurred too many responsibilities and that it is time to give up these play-calling duties to an OC.
Well, he did that last year. He said he wanted to be more of a CEO, and the thing he didn't like was that the team's personality was not what he liked. That's why he kind of took it back. Well, his personality is not much better either. So it's a lot to think about. I think there's going to have to be a long sitting down process on how to do this at the end of the year. And listen, I understand why they went for it. They went hard in the portal because RJ Harvey was coming back. They thought they can contend in the Big 12 title this year. It didn't work. So now what do? You're going to have to, I think, develop guys and build. And maybe we go back to that. I don't know if going back to the portal solves a lot. I mean, otherwise you're just doing the same thing. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. A lot of people are making comments about giving up play calling. He's not giving it up right now. I don't believe so. But that is something he's going to have to consider. But I don't know. We'll see, man. That guy likes to call plays. And again, my bigger concern is this. You could have the best play caller there. Not sure we have the players.
Yeah, it's true. And like you said, development from within is important. I mean, look at what the Michigan Wolverines did last year. Again, more of a recruiting powerhouse.
Not the most exciting. Well, in Michigan, not the most exciting. It wasn't like they were playing wild, creative offense there. They just kind of
no, it was old school. It was old school, run it down your throat football, and they had 4-year guys who had been there for the tenure of their college career, and Coach Harbaugh had built up that camaraderie and that cohesion with them, and it translated into a championship. Now, UCF is light years away from a national championship. They will be lucky again if they even finish above 500 this season and qualify for a bowl game. But yeah, I think that there is an important element to the in-house development that they need to start attacking, and a restructuring of the identity.
T. Pennington coming in. We have no creativity in our offensive play calling this year. 5 wins max. We will never throw to anybody else. We got tight ends with good hands. We don't even look at them the entire. Listen, the whole tight end thing has been going on for years and decades. I don't know what to tell you. Every year it's the same thing. Oh, we've got this tight end. We got it. We could throw him, get him more involved in the offense, and then they never end up being part of the offense. Maybe Jordan Akins was the last. I think Pittman's pretty talented. Pittman had a big penalty early in that game. I think part of the problem is sometimes the tight end is helping block as well, but it's a fair criticism, the tight end not being used. Fair. I can't disagree.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be implemented better, because they have guys with plenty of size that can translate into physicality on this team. But again, it's like, what do you do with the horses that you got in the stable? And they have to find a way to implement it, because, I mean, to go 7-5, this team's going to have to go 4-2 the rest of the way. Do we really, everyone in the chat and Elo, see them going 4-2 the rest of the way when they have 3 big dogs that they have to play? It's a tall task.
It's really a tall task. Give me some positives, Don. Give me some positives. Anything you like today. Anything. I'm not saying it's easy to find, but give me positives.
Well, I mean, I think that Kobe Hudson is back. They struggled to find him last week against Florida. He was essentially a non-factor outside of, I think he had 2 receptions, a few targets, but it took them until well into the game to find him. So today he got back to being the primary threat and the star receiver that he is. Again, like I said earlier, I do believe that they're getting better at QB pressure. I think that Ted Roof has his defense in a good enough spot, about as good as where they're going to be, because, I mean, last week against Florida, they had 24 first half points, and then UCF shut them out in the second half. Could have been a winnable game. Today, I mean, they forced the turnovers on a Cincinnati team who, while the jury might be out on if they're truly a decent team or not, the fact of the matter is that Brendan Sorsby came in with 12 touchdowns and only 1 pick, and they forced him into 2 nice picks where the defense had to make athletic plays to make it happen. So not a lot of positives, Elo, but I do look at those couple things as a North Star, so to speak, in a dredge of a season so far.
David Green, penalties hurt much more when you're not a very good team. Let me just say this. That was not a really well officiated game, but quite frankly, this game deserved to have a bad officiated game because it was a bad game in total. So that was weird, though. They couldn't figure out the clock. They had some clock management issues when they stopped the clock in that end of the first half when they weren't supposed to. But that was not really more on the officials. It was more on the clock operators. You had just weird calls, missed calls, but I don't know, man. It was bad. But you're right. I mean, there were some costly penalties at times against UCF, one where think about that last drive, Don, where they're moving the ball and then the false start, automatic 10-second demotion there because you have no timeouts left. So now you're, instead of 36 seconds, you're down to 26 seconds. boy, it just,
yeah, the runoff there was brutal, and that's a great point, Elo, because I just spent a little bit of time giving my flowers to Kobe Hudson. That penalty was on him, right?
Was it? I don't remember. I'm trying to.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to double check. So don't quote me on that.
Let's get a guy who's maybe paying attention a lot closer. He was on the field probably for that sequence there. Joining us now from Bounce House, Mr. Kyle Nash. Kyle Nash joining us from the Bounce House, fresh off the postgame coverage. Do you remember, was that on Kobe Hudson, that last penalty there in that last drive? Who was it on?
Yeah, it was on Kobe as I saw it. But here's the thing. There's a combination of that. Yeah, Kobe's name is on that penalty, but that's a communication. That's a look between the quarterback and the receiver. Kobe's got to get back as quick as possible, get set, make sure he doesn't jump, and then the quarterback has to make sure he's set before he makes the ball move. So it's one of those things where that eye-to-eye contact has to happen. It's nonverbal. And obviously when you're with a younger guy that you haven't had a lot of time with, that's something that could be a thing. But I just got out of the post-game conference here where Kobe Hudson said outright he was comfortable with playing either E.J. Colson or Ja'Cory Brown. He was ready to catch the ball from whoever got it to him, was the way he put it there. And a lot of leadership. Listen, Kobe Hudson had said last year when the Knights were struggling that there was a lot of stuff that went by. He didn't feel like his voice was loud enough to go in and call guys out. This season, he said that anybody who still has negativity there in that locker room that's not willing to make the fight, to do what it takes to get better, he's going to call them out and basically, in so many words, and I'll quote him on this, pack your stuff. If you don't step your game up, if you don't still have a positive outlook to try to turn the season around, he doesn't want to deal with you, is essentially the message he's putting out. And he made some declarations in that post-game press conference that the attitude will change, that things will get better. And I think he acknowledges that the offense was the problem in this football game.
All right, Kyle, let's get to it. E.J. Colson gets the start. K.J. Jefferson gets benched. You and I spoke late Friday. We had started hearing some rumblings about Colson and maybe getting some first-team reps. Colson ends up getting the start. Ja'Cory Brown comes in, ends up playing the majority of the game. What did Gus Malzahn say about the quarterback situation of benching Jefferson and going with the move he did, starting Colson and also playing Brown?
I mean, yeah, what he ended up saying was simply he was looking to start a spark. There was nothing really more elaborated with that. I did ask Kobe Hudson after game, though, what energy is different. He felt like it was generally the same offense with Ja'Cory Brown on the field, but he felt like Ja'Cory offered a little bit more speed, a little bit more ability to escape. What I'm hearing, Elo, is kind of echoes of preseason 2 years ago, right, when it was Mikey Keene versus JRP. And while anybody may have had feelings about Mikey Keene at the time being a better thrower of the football, it was about JRP's explosiveness and escapability that made him the choice that we said there. Why do I relate that? Very simple. E.J. Colson can move and explode a little bit better, and when protection was what was said to be by Gus Malzahn the biggest problem with the offense and getting the ball down the field to throw with K.J. Jefferson, he took that off the table, got a guy who could escape a little bit better, and you saw what the result was in a lot of plays where there were flashes after the young quarterbacks were trying to get acclimated for the first however. It's interesting, though. I mentioned the young quarterbacks being acclimated. It was a veteran that turned the ball over on back-to-back offensive plays. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, Johnny Richardson, who was going to probably be more involved in the offense, from two turnovers early was costly. The thing I don't understand, though, why start Colson and not Brown? And was there any clarification on that? Because on the broadcast, they mentioned that Colson had moved up to the backup job in recent weeks. But it seemed like Ja'Cory, and I can understand where Ja'Cory's the more experienced. He's gotten more reps. He played at Miami.
Right.
I can understand going with him, but what does that mean for E.J. Colson moving forward? Because to me, Kyle, here's the reality. And I know people are going to snicker. This season's over. And what are we? To me,
okay. Well, I hope you don't say that too loud. I'd like people come to more episodes of the Night Shift Live here. Okay, can we not pack up our own operation, Eric?
Listen, the majority of the people in this chat basically says, I don't care about this rest of the season. What I care about is who's going to be the starting quarterback next year, and you need to find that out the rest of the year, whether it's Ja'Cory Brown or E.J. Colson.
Well, and again, as we told people regularly with these sort of things, that body may still not yet be in the room, right? To ask that question now is just such I don't want to say it's obsolete thinking, but to not consider the fact that that guy may not be in the room because who knows, maybe Ja'Cory Brown will be bought by another school just like Thomas Castellanos will. If that's really the question you're asking now, it's a fun thing to speculate and talk about, but there's no way we can have those.
But that's why you got to play. I think you would agree. I mean, KJ Jefferson probably has taken his last snap.
I think that's safe to assume. I'm not here to say either way. I think it may be something too where coach looks at the matchup and sees something different. I think that's a big part of it too.
But to me, you've got to figure out, is Brown or Colson part of the future next year?
Well,
that to me has to be imperative.
Yeah, to answer your initial question, coach had said, I just got done hearing coach say that the plan was always to play both guys. I think what ended up happening is he went with the hotter hand. Now, could the argument be made that Johnny Richardson fumbling the ball on back-to-back offensive plays, momentum-wise, kind of killed EJ by accident? He's kind of victim of circumstance? Sure. He's also a 17-year-old guy who's the second youngest quarterback to ever start in a football game in Division I. Okay, I think that's worth mentioning. And by the way, credit to 24/7 and Steve Leonard for popping that stat. But I think the piece that needs to be mentioned is when it comes to EJ Colson, this is a development piece, right? We get clamoring from the fans who have now become scared of getting transfer portal quarterbacks. We need to develop a guy. Well, this is how you do it. You see EJ Colson emerging, you give him a shot with a safe life draft in the form of Ja'Cory Brown to make that difference. And I think that's what we saw tonight. And listen, give Ja'Cory credit. The way he took care of the football, yes, he did fumble it once. UCF did get it back. But for the rest of the game, the way he took care of the football, made smart decisions throwing it away. There was a lot more poise in him and his age than to reference, let's say, for example, a young Thomas Castellanos. And I'm encouraged by that a little bit.
Don Struble made a good point. I mean, you're basically going the Florida Gator route where Colson's playing the role of Lagway. And then perhaps Ja'Cory Brown is playing the role of Grant Mertz.
Sort of. There's a loose connection there. I don't see a Gus going with two quarterbacks moving forward unless things get really dire, which, I mean, is on the table for the Iowa State game. Let's be honest.
I think we're beyond dire now. I think we're beyond, because here's the thing. Teams now will have tape on Ja'Cory Brown and Colson if you want to throw him in there. I think
will they?
Teams will be much more prepared. Cincinnati was not prepared for Ja'Cory Brown. They had no containment on him when he ran outside. I guarantee you, other teams now moving forward will have containment for Ja'Cory Brown. He's going to have to make throws.
And that's the thing. He did make some throws. That's the part that's getting left out. You know, it's not
a little better.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not here to say he's a world-beating quarterback, but 13 for 20. We haven't seen completion percentage like that since Sean Rice Plumlee, and he didn't always get that, right? With a Gus Malzahn offense, let me remind you, Elo, it's all about serviceable quarterback play. He doesn't have to beat the world beater if the game is close. And listen, Gus has made the statement, and he's getting reamed for it, but it's true for any run-first team that you aren't a team to come back. I think the real encouraging thing is to see what the defense did tonight. Even Gus Malzahn himself said this was the best defense the defense or so. I know you're going to snicker. Just
we can thank Scott Satterfield. We can thank Scott Satterfield for some of the boneheaded play calling on their side.
The infamous play calling card. I love it. Yeah.
Hey, how did Cincinnati look at? The problem is the defense played okay, but you've written about this on Night Class. I learned this from your article
on the
last couple of years.
Bing.
Bing. Right, yeah, I know. I'm not the producer that you are. You highlighted many a times. Get off the field. Third down conversions. Don, give Kyle the stat again on how Cincinnati did on third down.
I don't need the stat. 8 for 14 at one point in the game, right? What was it? 4 of the first 7, something like that. It doesn't matter if they don't put points on the board, guys. If you want to give me that lecture, cool. Let's look at 27 and 2018's defense. They lived that same way. The difference was they just did not have a prolific offense. Can the defense survive this way in the future? No, probably not. But what this game was, Eric, is the best game they played so far and something they can build on. Finding a way to get a quarterback under duress where the air game for the number 2 offense in the conference was something to be afraid of. The DBs played better in a way that I haven't seen in coverage. I don't know what exactly changed. Granted, there were a couple moments where I saw some Addison Williams-esque sitting back way too far plays on third down. Seeing I forget his name off the bat, but it was a number 10 for Cincinnati, just sitting open way too many, converting too many third and longs, certainly a problem. Not here to say it's great, but to act like this is something where the defense had a bad game, I don't care who you are. If you give up fewer than 20 points, you did your job, because the most important stat in any football game, Eric Lopez, is the score.
The problem is I'm not sure this offense right now could score over 20 points.
Well, and hey, you want an argument there? No, I'm trying to buff up the defense, not say that the offense was great. Let's keep it clear. Let's keep this goalpost right in front. Kyle said the defense had a good game.
Fair point. Let's bring in Bryson Turner. Is I think back in his he's in the press box. That's where he got the press box today. Bryson, give me what else did Gus have to say in the post game that stood out to you?
I think it's not only what Gus said, but also how he said it, because I felt like I picked up, to me, that Gus sounded very, I don't want to say defeated, but I do want to say that because he said he wanted to look for a spark, which occurred. He made those changes for a reason. And as I feel like with anyone, the changes, the fact that these changes didn't end up working and getting him to win kind of, get at you a little bit. I also got to imagine, they had a chance to win the ball game late. That 10-second runoff was just absolutely killer, because they were on a roll on that drive. So I think it's clear that the wins, the win was still possible, and they just still couldn't get it. So I think that's what really, I think, stood out to me the most out of everything, is just kind of how he said everything.
Don, go ahead, ask questions for Bryson and Kyle.
I'm trying to think here. I mean, we've covered.
Don's been speechless. By the way, how funny? It's not funny, but we lost. But we have Don here, and one of the players that I was impressed with on Cincinnati and the defensive front, Corleone. Don Corleone, Godfather.
Yeah, the Godfather.
And Kyle, offensive line whipped again. Cincinnati got some pressure. 3-man front there in that last drive. Forced Corey Brown out of the pocket. They can't run the ball. Teams are playing to stop that running game. And the offensive line is just not as good as last year, period.
That is a true statement. They did better than last week. And listen, Marcellus Marshall at center actually was pretty compelling to me. I'm not here to say that he forced his guy off the ball every snap, that this line played great, but they are off the ground. There were elements of them finding some holes, getting some things. And listen, whenever Ja'Cory was flushed, he made smart plays and made runs out of it. So there's a certain element to the protection being in the right gaps with that. Whereas with KJ, listen, say what you will about him being slower than Ja'Cory or not. At the end of the day, he had nowhere to go in the swamp. So, I mean, that's the clear difference there for me. But listen, the real issue is saying as an offensive lineman, when you have a 3-man front, if they're playing back and offering a nickel or like a pass style defense, sure, that's an easier block. When they're sending the house and you don't know what they're doing other than trying to stop your running back, you don't always get every single push you would like. And there's some guys that find other gaps or come in from the backside that you just can't reach because physics are a thing. Am I giving the O-line a pass? No, but they certainly did better than they will last week. I will certainly give them that.
I will say this, like I think there were key moments where the O-line was certainly just Swiss cheese, but let's not ignore the fact that there were a few plays where they did hold up a little bit to give Ja'Cory some time to get past it. It didn't happen all the time, but I feel like it's looking for more for consistency, maybe.
That's fair. Well, and that's the thing. If they give you different looks, if they change up something, you have to make the adjustments up front. And when you have a different starter at center and a different starter at quarterback, those physics are difficult. You're going to have some mishmashes. There's going to be some times the wrong call is made in that situation. There's nothing you can do about it. The best thing we could say, guys, is this is one they have under their belt. The optimistic thing would be to say that they improve and maybe put out a better product next week against Iowa State. Though, as you've stated correctly, Eric, that is a much more talented group up front. I agree with you 100% on that.
Plus, I don't know who's going to be your playmaker outside of Kobe Hudson. They try to make it Johnny Richardson, but he couldn't hold on to the ball. I'm not sure who that is. Now, a couple guys stepped up, but Magwood made his first catch of the year and things like that. But
crazy catch, by the way.
Very fortunate, but I mean, teams are not scared of this offense. It's a very limited offense right now, for whatever the reason. And it's interesting now. You're going to go on the road. Teams are going to have tape on you, and you're going to have the crowd against you. So we'll see what adjustments they make there. But can they find a way to get back to the running game? But they may have to get some completions early to open up the running game. They're going to have to figure something out here, guys.
Well, Jakuri did a really good job today. Like Gus talked about how good Jakuri did a really good job in the RPO game. And I almost feel like that this is what KJ Jefferson should have been. I think. I know we kind of brought up JRP a little bit, and sure, but this is the type of quarterback that this is why Gus went after in the transfer portal. This type of stuff that Jakuri is able to do with the ball is the stuff we wanted KJ to do. Now, obviously, you're going to have tape on him and whatnot, but I mean, if anything, I feel like
we're overselling the tape thing, guys. It's one game, okay? Like, how much can you really learn from 20 pass attempts? Yeah, I'm with you, Elo. They should probably contain the outside, but guess what? Probably should have been doing that against this team anyway. It's the other little things that they'll be looking for. And how much evidence of that do they really have? Is it a lot? I don't know. I do trust Coach Matt Campbell, to your point, Elo, to at least have something to try to throw at the kid. But let's not act like that everything's out there, that they got a full season of tape and it's there ready to go. It's not like New Hampshire, him coming in late in garbage time is accurate tape to read from either, okay? Let's dial back the tape thing. Though, like you say, maybe they can still, in that smaller film, pick up a small tick, pick up something that'll give an indicator of where he needs going with the play. Maybe he has a tell. But beyond that, tendencies for how he plays, that's not a very significant sample size.
Well, I'm sure they'll double cover Kobe Hudson, though.
There's a lot more samples of that.
22 pass attempts, 13 targets were Kobe Hudson targets. Gus said it. They have a great room of receivers, but you got to spread the ball out a little more. That's, I think, the biggest advice I could give Jakuri at this point. RJ obviously is a good dump off option, but you need Javarius Johnson, Chauncey Maurer, Jacoby Jones, Trent Whittemore. Someone needs to step up. Trent almost did on a catch. It just ended up not working. Chauncey stepped up really well. I mean, hopefully he could get some more time, maybe, but.
I'll back Eric. I'll play the Eric Lopez role on this one, Bryson. You say a great receiver room. I don't know that that's the correct adjective.
Well, I'm quoting Gus here, okay? So you're criticizing Gus.
Oh, no. Okay, I didn't realize you were quoting. I beg your pardon.
Well, welcome to the conversation that Elo and I were having before you guys got here, Bryson. Who's going to be the next dimension in this offense? Because it's two-dimensional with RJ and Kobe. I mean, but another thing that me and Elo talked about is, do they have the horses in the stable to make this happen? Now, I think that any team, I mean, you look at teams across the board, whether in college or especially in the case of the NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs, they did less with more last season en route to a second straight Super Bowl victory with a weak receiving core. Now, obviously, that's Patrick Mahomes at the helm, so it's not really comparable.
We sure don't have that.
From a smaller sample size, can someone else get involved? Because over 50% of your targets cannot go to the same guy. I mean, there's a level of predictability here that's just getting too easy to read. And fellas, 6 games left. Half of those are against top 20 opponents, the big dogs of the Big 12.
Yeah, no, it's not anybody doing anybody favors. My response to your question, Don, would be the disappearance of Randy Pittman. I see him making a lot of great blocks and doing things from the tight end spot, but I would wonder. I mean, I haven't. I'll put it this way. If the film is showing that he's getting covered up quick, I would be surprised, because I don't think teams are generally looking for him or for a throw to the tight end out of this offense. It does not happen very much.
No,
so if you wanted to throw a wrench in whatever film is out there, I think using the tight end might throw some dudes off.
Other people have made that comment here tonight. Where is the tight end? Get him involved. I agree. I concur. I don't, again, is some of that maybe he's helping on the blocking scheme? Who knows? But listen,
he's definitely how many years blocks. I'll give him that credit.
And that's the problem. How many years have we talked about using the tight end more? I mean, this goes pre-Gus, right? I mean, it's for whatever reason.
This is Alec Holler questions. No, you're right.
I agree. I agree with Bryson on this. I think I mentioned earlier, I think you're playing for 2025 here the rest of the way. To me, you need to find out who your quarterback is. You also need to find out who's your receivers you can depend on next year, to Bryson's point. Because play the kids. Somebody get open, prove yourself. It's wide open. You're almost treating this like it's a wide open competition the rest of the way, because really your season's done. Like I don't want to hear about, well, we're going to try to be bowl eligible. Who gives a flip?
Well,
Nobody should care about it. Not in this era. Not in this era.
Hold on.
If you're trying to recruit for next year, you want to
give me a break with that. How did that help out last year? Did that recruiting help out in the Gasparilla Bowl? Give me a break. Come on.
If you're going to ask the question to wait for the answer, Lopez, do better. What I'm saying is, if you want that extra recruiting time, getting a bowl game is the way to do it. Maybe it didn't work last year, but you got to get it from somewhere. If things are as desperate as you would have us imply, Sultan.
There's also the fact that you want to make sure you keep that bowl game streak alive, because when you make a bowl game, when you make a bowl game, you're at least not awful. Like, think about Rutgers.
Are you kidding me?
Imagine how people in that feels after not going to bowls forever.
Mediocrity is defined by these bowl games. Are you kidding me?
Especially,
nobody cares.
Especially in the expanded
not win anything.
Bullcrap.
I mean, at least we're not winning anything. We're trying to look. I understand that we got to play the kids and whatnot, because I said this at the beginning of the season, that this was an opportunity. Looking into the season on paper, this looked like an opportunity for UCF to maybe try for a Big 12 title game. Clearly, that did not work. And now Gus is just trying to find the spark to just win games at this point down the road. I actually said this in the Florida game. Strike 1, Colorado. Strike 2, Florida. Strike 3. Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's the thing is, we talk about, getting a bowl game. Yeah, it would be good for recruitment. But Bryson, are these G5 aspirations or Power 5 aspirations? Because last I checked, UCF is in the Big 12. They're a Power 5 school.
Oh, well, we're 2 years into a power conference. We should obviously be winning at these points. Come on, guys.
Yes.
Everybody else is. BYU
Kyle
is
is absolutely right. Kyle is absolutely absolutely right. Look, BYU, first of all, is independent, so they're in a little bit of a different situation than we are. Second thing is the fact that we are going into this with a G5 roster, all that stuff, transfer portal, blah, blah, blah. Gus clearly tried to compete. He tried to be Power 5 aspiration right away, and look where that got him. So,
well, here's where I'll come in with this. And you mentioned BYU as a fair point, Elo. They obviously didn't have a quarterback bought from UCF's locker room that necessitated KJ Jefferson being bought in, right? Who's the guy that you believe Gus would have been starting if he had his way right now? It's not KJ Jefferson. He had to go purchase him late. Who was it, Eric? He's at BC now, if you need to complete the circle. It was Thomas Castellanos. BYU was able to hold on to their guy, was able to do what they needed to do with their roster turnover. It's little things like that where it's not any. The mistake I think we're making with this conversation is it's not any just one thing, guys. We had to strike out last year with trying to repair the defense with transfers. Didn't go the way we'd like. One of the worst run defenses in the nation. That part's at least been recovered. Quarterback, we rolled the same die. KJ Jefferson hasn't been delivering, so now we're going to the pantry. The good news is we have guys now that were developed and are developing. That's the part where the 2025 piece comes in. And then that's the part where it is. The bowl game thing, the point I make was for extra practices. We went way too far down that rabbit hole, okay? Let's drag that back in to say this. That's the main reason you keep bowl games involved, is because it's not just recruitment or cachet, which do matter when you're trying to get guys out there. Let me be clear. I don't like it any more than you do, Eric, even though I'm the guy who covers bowl games and enjoys doing it. I get it. I'm weird.
The sport has basically put bowl games on the ground by expanding the playoff. They're telling you it doesn't matter. That's the problem. That it's not what it used to be anymore.
Maybe it's not, but it's still recruiting tools. Trust me, they make more of a difference than you give credit. I'm not saying that they're the value that they used to have. That's a separate conversation.
Well, let me ask you this: hold on.
You're the guy who keeps telling me I need to make it to the Rose Bowl one day.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if the sport doesn't stop spitting on it. Let me ask you this. If the bowl game is so important, BYU missed the bowl game. Why are they so much better this year? If the bowl game is so much, they didn't make a bowl game last year.
I answered that. It's resources. It's about having guys that they
resources. Everybody has resources.
All right. So, Elo, you want me to ask?
Hold on. You've seen the graphs, Elo. You know how much less money UCF has than the rest of the conference, man. Come on now. If you're going
to spend money on this team, though. They spend money on this team. Let's not act like they didn't.
But it's still lower than the rest of the conference, Eric.
Oh,
Maybe so.
Hey,
Maybe so.
Bryson, back off. The point's been made. Let him hang himself. Don, what do
All
you
right.
got?
Well, here's the thing. So Elo wanted me to ask you guys a question earlier when you got in, and I didn't have anything at the time. Well, now I do. Bryson, Kyle, should Gus relinquish play calling and focus on being Gus the recruiter? I know he had. I know he went back to that position to pick up play calling again. It simply has not worked. It's not working. The offense is predictable and stagnant. What do you do?
Okay.
What would you have a play call change be that can actually make?
You can't do it in the middle of the season. I should clarify going into next season, depending on how the rest of the year plays out.
Well, and this is the part, Bryson, I'll hand you the ball after this, but like this is what kills me is you have a veteran fifth-year guy fumble the ball on back-to-back offensive plays, and then to get in a spark, you have two young quarterbacks, the oldest of which is a redshirt sophomore. What can play calling do to rescue that when you have a shallow receiver core and everybody knows your star and what he's doing? What can play calling specifically fix?
That's a reasonable point, and that's why I don't think it can be addressed this season. This team is who they are.
Let me ask you three this. Would you have benched KJ Jefferson today, or would you have started him? Who wants to take that?
I can't answer that without seeing the practices, because I'll tell you, I'll listen. I'll go on record saying if you asked me that question going into this game, I'd have said there's no way it happens because I don't believe we have confidence. Right? It's the same thing as with Thomas Castellanos when it was him where John Rice Plumlee got hurt, and it was between him and Mikey Keene. Right? My attitude was always save Castellanos. He wasn't ready. Well, apparently my opinion of Ja'Cory Brown is absolutely wrong because he's gotten better, over the season so far. We don't get access to practice, so I would have been wrong in my answer, right? But if you were going to do it, this was the game to do it because, as was cited wisely by Don, the rest of the schedule is the bear that it is. This is the one, air quotes, warm-up game remaining where you would have a really good shot to do that at this point.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the practice tapes. I mean, Gus even said that EJ has had a very good couple of weeks of practice. And so it's clear. I think it was clear to him that he deserved the chance to get some reps, and they did that. Same with Curry. So see if he goes back to KJ. But I think if there is any opportunity to give those people a chance in a real game scenario, then I think this is indeed the one. So, I mean, it just depends on the practice tapes. Don?
Yeah, I'm sure that the Kingdom would have liked to start him his NIL deal. But saying that, I think from I like I told Elo earlier, we're kind of dealing with a 5-alarm fire here with this team. I do think that defensively they have looked a little bit better, but offensively it's a 5-alarm fire. And kind of to Bryson's point, there must have been something that they saw in the tape that is warranting this. Besides the obvious reasoning, they must have seen a path forward in which KJ Jefferson was not going to succeed with his current level of play. And that's before the big dogs in the conference.
Last one for Kyle, because I want to get him going so he could write a night class that, boy, I can't wait for those grades. That's some grades are all right. Moving forward, what do you do at quarterback? Kyle, starting with you. What do you do?
I mean, listen, you'll never change my mind. Hey, I'm a 49er fan. I go with the hot hand, right? Whether it's Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, or whoever it is, Brock Purdy, whatever. Whoever's doing good, you stay on that track until they stop doing good, man. So, yeah, for me, you start Ja'Cory next week. I don't see how you go away from him at this point.
So this is interesting. I actually think that they should go with a KJ Ja'Cory kind of thing, kind of like how Ja'Cory and EJ were this today, because I think Colson, yes, you want to get him some time, but I do want to make sure he redshirts, because having him redshirt would definitely be a very good asset for the.
Well, all right, let's pause on that. Let's put a pin on that for a second. So I want to let Kyle go, so he can write the article. Because I don't want him to suffer through more football. And he's got to get up early for another bad football team in the Jaguars and that nonsense in about 12 hours.
Transfer Sports Network, Bing.
Kyle, tell the audience about the night what you got going to have put up on blackandgoldbanneret.com later tonight.
Yeah, so with night class, definitely have to evaluate all the sources made. What worked with the spark, what obviously didn't, besides the scoreboard, and whether or not we're truly in 5 alarm fire territory, how that looks like, what the focus should be, any of that. But also, what we saw from this game, and we haven't even touched special teams, gentlemen, of all the various different faces. The only guy that's the same is Mitch McCarthy. I mean,
He had a good game.
He did have a very good game, and all of that and more will be addressed on tonight's episode of Night Class, which you can find on the Black and Gold Banneret.com. Bing! So, guys, an honor, joy, and privilege to jump aboard. Elo, man, always fun doing my thing with the Sultan of Stickball. And hey, listen, I talked to Coach Johnny Dawkins on the sideline. He's excited for Media Day coming up. I can tell you that for a fact, my friend. So you have that to look forward to as well. I know.
Amen.
I know Don's chomping at the bit to jump in. More stuff with the Black and Gold Banneret and the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Bing! That you'll see from him. Donnie Docs doing the thing. Since we're mentioning Donnie's with, particular name, with particular names of a particular genre.
Don and Corleone.
Yeah. So, fellas, with that in mind, an honor, joy, and privilege. And until next time, class dismissed.
All right, that's Kyle Nash on the field there at the bounce house. He's going to work on his recap. All right. Continue your point, Bryce, because you're bringing up the quarterback moving forward. What to do with the quarterback position. So you're saying split Jacory with who?
KJ.
Why would you bring KJ back?
Mostly because, one, get your money's worth, because KJ's already burned his red shirt at this point. And the other thing is, I think you want to save EJ's red shirt. Maybe you bring EJ in for a few more games, but because you want to have more years with him.
You really believe he's going to play here 4 years?
I think it's certainly possible.
I disagree. In today's landscape, to depend on a guy to stay for 4 years, I wouldn't make a decision based on that. Now, if you're telling me he's not ready, that's different.
I mean, today hasn't shown me he's ready yet. He only attempted one pass. So to me, I don't think he's ready yet, and so you need a redshirt. Maybe you play him for a few more games and then you decide, because he does have, I believe, a couple of more games on his redshirt to do that with. But in my opinion, for long-term scenario, I think you have Jacory as kind of the 1A to KJ's 1B, because say KJ is able to get things going again and does better in practice again, then more power for UCF to have in the quarterback department. But Jacory is clearly having the hot hand right now, and so if you could only do one quarterback, he's the guy going forward. But Gus has played multiple quarterbacks in games before he did tonight, so I feel like that if you want to save EJ's red shirt because it's not ready yet, then you just slot KJ in there.
Don, what would you want to see?
To be honest with you, we see this in the NFL a lot. Starting quarterbacks lose their jobs and they don't get them back. And KJ has not played well enough to warrant keeping his position. I understand getting your money's worth, Bryson, but at the same time, I feel like you need to put your stock into your guys that are going to be here next year and beyond. And if you want to hold on to an EJ Colson, which I partly believe, and I don't want to stoke the flames of uncertainty, rather, because I don't know anything about this. This is just my personal opinion. Is there a chance that EJ could have been looking towards the door already, and they don't want to lose it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Only he and his team know that.
Yeah, I would keep Brown and possibly Colson. I think that KJ was always going to be a 1-year rental. We're halfway through the year. It hasn't worked out. It's only tougher opponents ahead, and I hardly see him playing any better against top 20 Utah, BYU, or Iowa State next week in Ames than he would against a struggling Florida Gators team with a bad defense.
Yeah, I think once you pulled the cord, you can't go back.
You got to commit.
Bar an injury, right? And now, and again, whether you want to play, you want to make a bowl, don't make a bowl. To me, the priority is get yourself in a better position for 2025. And one of the ways you do that is to find out, do you have your starting quarterback in 2025 on this roster? Is that Jacory Brown? Is that EJ Colson? I think you play both. You could still play Colson in 3 more games. If you decide he's better than that, than Jacory, then so be it. I think you play both. I think if you're gonna play 2 quarterbacks, I would play those 2, what you did today. Kind of like what Florida's doing with Lagway and Mertz. Otherwise, if you go with one guy, I think you do go with Jacory Brown, because I do think Jacory Brown showed he was faster than KJ at this point. and running the RPO, and you might need his legs to give you some extra plays because you don't have the explosive plays elsewhere. So maybe having explosive plays from your quarterback with the legs might be much needed in this offense right now.
No, a key element, and it's a small sample size, but I feel like Curry Brown, he's better at going downfield. I put more trust into him with the deep ball at this point, especially on that design rollout when he went to Magwood. That was a nice catch. It was an even better pass considering he had to come off like
no more zip on the ball, it seems like.
Yeah. No, it's just KJ's accuracy. I mean, outside of the TCU game, I mean, I don't think he has another game where he's thrown at a 60% clip. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. I'd have to look at the stats. But from what I've been paying attention to, he's been in those low to mid 50s all season, and it's just not good enough.
Eric, I remember saying this, I think, before this season started, that on paper, this was the year to try to go for a Big 12 title. If it doesn't work out, then you're going to have to pull back and just play for the future. Well, that time to play for the future has come a lot earlier than I think we would have expected. I think, honestly, better to have it happen now than have the wheels come off at the end of the season, because now you have more time to look and see what you have from the long-term talent angle to then maybe angle yourself better going into 2025. So that way, maybe you can actually have a better year in 2025. Though to me, given the years of the people, of the youth that are here, you also are thinking about 2026, and you're trying to think about what is your new core going forward, because there are a lot of one-year rentals on this squad. So I think there's a lot of taking time to now really assemble that core for 2025, maybe even 2026, and so that way you can prepare them for that reality going forward.
And I'm not saying you don't use the portal. I think there's a balancing act, and that's not just UCF. I think everybody's trying to figure out in the sport about that, finding that right mix of adding guys in the portal and adding guys from your recruiting. And I think I don't think you can go heavy 40, 50 guys. Now, look, at Arizona State, they did that. It's working a little bit. Wasn't the criticism on Deion Sanders that he's too transfer portal dependent? Now, again, Mike Norvell, I think, is the poster boy for this. It worked in 2023. It has not worked, and then some in 2024. And the problem is when you miss, you really are going to cover for bear. So I think the answer is the top teams to see him have figured out is find a balance. Like, people are going to make a point about BYU having resources. Yes, but they've developed players. Now they've added a quarterback. They've added some pieces. I think that's the answer, is you add the portal, add to the nucleus. And I think that's what you're referring to, Bryson. And I kind of concur, which is why, to me, the rest of the year, you play the young guys. You play the young receivers. Find out what you got and who steps up and who is that core going into 25. You're going to have another freshman class coming in, and then you go to the portal and add some pieces. But I don't think the answer is to go back to the portal and go 50, 60, whatever, however numbers you want to say. There's got to be a nucleus there they got to figure out. And if you can get a quarterback out of this roster into next year, then you don't have to go to the portal and spend money, which for a quarterback, which is going to cost you money, because that's a very expensive position to get. And that, if you're telling me UCF can't compete with that, I don't disagree with that, then you need to develop your guy, because you're not going to compete against the big teams like Ohio States of the world to get top talent.
Oh yeah, and keep in mind also, this is just for the offense. I mean, the defense is a completely other factor, because at least the defense is actually showing some promise. The problem is the offense isn't really meeting them right now. But you have people like Braden Marshall, who's definitely Braden Marshall and all that. But you really want to try to, I think, because it's a lot harder, I think, on defense to figure this out. And that's what I kind of noticed with UCF football, is that it seems like the offense and the defense have just never really been able to kind of meet each other right at the top. Either one's working and one isn't, or both of them stink. And so even looking at this, I mean, I'm seeing the transfers like Sheldon Arnold, Nigel Lee Kelly, all these different ones. And I believe a lot of them, Deshaun Pace, Ethan Barr, are one-year rentals. What do you do on that side of the ball when you're trying to play for the future, because obviously maybe that's just practice, and they're just going to have to go for the practice tapes, and then we'll see what happens in the fifth year guys. But everything we talked about before is just offense. So going in defense, I think that's an even harder scenario. And then of course special teams, well, we already see Grant Reddit. So
that's where I think Gus, at this stage and age in his career, he needs to focus on Gus the recruiter, because it's very valid points you bring up, Bryce.
He's a good recruiter, right?
He's a good recruiter. He is a good recruiter, but when you have the responsibility of play calling and recruiting, and you're not like you're a newcomer to Power 5, you're not a blue blood program that just kind of recruits itself and recruits on its own. It takes that extra effort, and I just feel like it would be in everyone's best interest if he brought an OC into the room to help him out, so he could focus solely on recruiting to make sure that both sides of the ball are properly addressed.
Well, but remember how Gus talked about how he relinquished play calling before, and then he took it back. It's not to psychoanalyze here, but it seems to me that Gus really is about being in control in some ways. Like, he's very particular about things. He wants to play call. And when he's not, it's like if a play call didn't work and Gus didn't call that play, then he'd be like, oh man, I probably would have called this. I probably would do it. Like if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself, kind of thing. And so that's I think the problem is that can Gus even do that? And that's where I think a lot of the fan base needs to recalibrate what they really see with this team, because people have warned us. You got to take the good with the bad with Gus. And I think this is the part of it. We need that right now at this stage in the UCF program journey. We need the recruits. Long term, we need the recruits in order to have the talent to compete with the P4 schools long term. Unfortunately, and Gus is going to do that. The problem is that the play calling is just not exactly going to be up there. But for the long term benefit, that's what the idea is. The long term, it'll work out in the long term. And unfortunately, it's kind of a patience game at this point. So
that's reasonable. Yeah, that's a good point.
You got a better roster. People aren't as focused on the play calling at that point. We could say somebody, we got to find out. Where are the explosive players? Where are the explosive plays? We saw it up close with Colorado, how they found they can create explosive plays. TCU, which is not a very good team, had players that can make explosive plays. Again, we're scrutinizing the play call, and I get it. But if you have better talent, it's not like Scott Frost. It's funny. Everybody wants to bring Scott Frost back at the OC. How did Scott Frost, the OC, did in Nebraska? How did he do? What happened to his offense in Nebraska? Not too good, did it?
Yeah.
Why? Because he didn't have Traquan Smith. Maybe he didn't have Mackenzie Milton over there. You need talent at the end of the day. That's what I think needs to be focused in.
What I've noticed is that you have there's a difference with the recruiter and you have the talent. Nick Saban, he was able to do recruit and recruit the talent and know how to coach that talent and do the play call. Josh Heupel, he knows how to coach talent. Tennessee has kind of proven that. But he's not a very good recruiter, as we've seen at UCF and how things worked out with him. Scott Frost, he can definitely coach talent. We saw, because he took a team mostly full of O'Leary guys and took them to the national championship in 2017. So he can coach talent. The recruiting ended up being an issue because that's what led him down the road in Nebraska. So it's all about trying to find someone who's really good at both. But the problem is obviously those are the best coaches, and those are very hard to find. And so in the end, you have to choose what kind of coach you need at this given junction. And like when UCF hired Josh Heupel, they were coming off of the national championship, so they needed a coach because the talent was already there. They just needed someone to coach that talent. That's what Josh Heupel did. Then going into the Big 12, they needed recruits. They needed the talent to build up. You need a recruiter. So that's where you get Gus. And so Gus is going to end up doing his thing, getting talent, and then next time, whatever the next coach is going to be, it's probably going to be more of a play caller, though you definitely want to make sure you have the recruiting element here. But right now we have to focus on the recruiting, and that's what Gus does.
We'll see. Long ways to go. We got only a couple minutes. Let's start wrapping this up. We can only go around the horn, so many times with the same old, same old. The bottom line is they're 3-3. They will go to Iowa State next Saturday night in Ames, Iowa. The Cyclones are playing as we speak. I believe they're playing West Virginia. Then after that, BYU and their fan base will be coming to the Bounce House in 2 weeks. We'll get the kickoff time on Monday for that game. And then Arizona comes here. Arizona just got thumped by BYU. BYU's undefeated. You could argue right now the top teams in the Big 12, at least two of the top contenders for the Big 12 title game, UCF will get to play next 2 weeks in Iowa State and BYU guys. So, but then again, right, this is the same program that beat Oklahoma State last year. So when, can they rally the troops and get an upset win? Sure. But,
yeah,
man, that was some painful football to watch. That was rough.
Yeah, it's been pain the last couple of weeks, but in the end, I mean, now at this point, like I said with the 3 strikes. Now that the strike 3 has been hit and it's out, it's almost kind of freeing in a way, because now you've kind of free yourself from the relief of expectations. At this point, you're looking at the future. You'd love to win. You definitely would love to do that, but it almost is like it releases some of the stress in some ways, at least
if you see progress. And I think if you see progress in certain positions, the quarterback, the receivers, do we see progress as the season develops, or do we see the same inconsistencies? I think will define how people feel on a week basis. Trust me. I don't know, man. It was rough. There's no other words to put it.
Yeah, that's the general consensus here, I think, between us and our audience.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. We'll be back on next Saturday night, primetime, against Iowa State. We'll be on. You guys might be on. I might let you guys just talk. I'm tired of talking. I mean, what am I supposed to say?
Yeah, hopefully not 4 straight weeks of therapy, but we'll see.
Oh, my goodness. Folks, keep in mind on blackandgoldbanneret.com, we got Olympic sports going on. Volleyball's at home on Sunday. Men's soccer has a big home match against nationally ranked Marshall. That's a big, big monster game on men's soccer. We'll keep it on track on blackandgoldbanneret.com on that. Basketball season's around the corner. You'll start hearing more about UCF basketball in the next weekend. Hey, in a week as well, fall ball starting, baseball and softball. Hallelujah.
Yeah, the Sultan is getting ready.
Yeah.
So what's there else to look forward to? Give me your final thoughts here before we wrap up.
The expectations have released at this point. I'm a new person. I'm just released myself to where I'm just following this team just to see how it all goes. We're looking for progress going forward. Was this painful? Very much so. Could have had it at the end. Defense did it as best as they could have. But in the end, I think this team has really showed that this year just isn't the year if you're looking for Big 12 championship. So now it's just about, we now know that we got to kind of look more to the future. And now that we actually know what we're doing, I feel like we can actually adjust our expectations accordingly.
Yep. The building is burning. It's time to put out the flame. But before you grab the hoses, take a look in the mirror and realize what needs to be done to keep from starting up any more fires and finish out this season in the best way possible. Yeah, a good win akin to the Oklahoma State blowout of last season would do wonders for this team, especially if they get to knock out arguably the top team in the Big 12 right now in Ames next weekend. But until then, yeah, a lot of soul searching needs to be done in the days leading up to that, and they need to come out better.
All right, last thoughts. First of all, I'm just happy we're doing a show, guys. I'll be honest with you. 3-4 days ago, I wasn't sure we were going to be doing a show
me
talking
too.
about a game. So we're all grateful. Be all grateful. Hopefully everybody's doing okay. If you're watching this and listening to this, I know you're not feeling good about the game itself, but I think the big picture of life, considering the last week and what has transpired with Hurricane Milton, hopefully you're doing okay, because there's a lot of people that are not. I know a lot of people that are not. So let's keep that just thoughts on with those people as they have a much more serious recovery and timetable ahead of them than some football game on Saturday. That said, we hope we provided entertainment, distraction a little bit, as well as obviously information on this football game and the coverage. Keep it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Kyle Nash will have his article there. We'll have a ton of stuff. I'm sure we'll have photos. We'll have it all. We'll have it on all the social media platforms. We'll be on here. We're going to be on, win or lose. We'll be on every game after every game. I might just let Bryson and Don talk next week with Kyle. I don't know. I may just take the show off. I need just a break a little bit. But that's when UCF will take on Iowa State next Saturday night. Kickoff, I believe, 7:30-ish, I want to say. So
Yes.
it's a Fox game there. So we'll have the crew there to do the live show. We'll do a live show there and every other game. And then basketball coverage, men's and women's, will be around the corner. We'll have media day coming up for UCF. We'll have coverage of that. We'll get you set for the big basketball season. We'll have some basketball previews coming up in a few weeks. Believe it or not, folks, the Big 12 schedule's out with start times and everything. Nobody's talked about it. Of course, we were a little distracted, obviously, for obvious reasons this week. But check all that out. We'll discuss all that. We'll have a regular podcast back. Jeffrey's back. He's back from wherever he went, which was a cruise. What a time to go on a cruise, right as the hurricanes come. Should be fun. Good crowds, right, Bryson? Good crowd.
Oh yeah, I mean, but the final attendance number came out at 42,611. So I mean, hey, I took a walk through campus and saw the tailgating action. Memory Mall was closed for recruiting. I mean, the fact that a hurricane just came through here and the amount of people that showed up like they did I was pretty impressed. I was not expecting the whole place to be full. I think
and a lot of credit to people that couldn't make it to the game, gave away tickets to other people that could go to the game, and credit to everybody involved. They're making that happen.
Yeah. So honestly, for a hurricane game, I think it worked out. By the way, hats off to whoever at UCF was able to fix the south end zone cabanas, because obviously there was some damage in the storm that happened with that, and the roof, and so they just took out the roof of all the cabanas and just put like beach umbrellas on them. Like if you had not known what the cabanas looked like before seeing this, and you looked at that, you would have probably thought that was the way it was supposed to be the whole time. So props to the people that were able to get this stadium ready for this game in such a short amount of time after such a strong storm causing the damage that it did.
Very good. All right, that's a good way to end it on a positive note. Thanks, everybody, tuning in tonight through all the chat rooms and the comments and the questions. I know there's a lot of frustration, but we appreciate all of you tuning in. Hopefully you tune in next week and beyond. For Don Struble, for Bryson Turner, for Kyle Nash, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift Live postgame. Final score one more time. Cincinnati 19, UCF 13. Good night and charge on.